Hey there, welcome back. Or if you're new here, welcome in. Tonight, we're not walking battlefields or climbing castle towers. We're doing something much simpler and much stranger. We're going to bed, but not your bed, not your room. Tonight, we're settling into a creaky wooden frame, stuffed with straw, wrapped in scratchy wool, and wearing yesterday's clothes. We're not lying flat. That would be... We're sitting up, propped gently with a folded cloak, and hoping, as people once did, to wake up again. Because in the 1300s, sleep wasn't just rest, it was survival. But before we get too far into this strange medieval night, if you like these slow, gentle walks through forgotten corners of history, only if it feels right to you. No pressure, just soft history at a sleepy pace. And if you're already part of this little time-traveling sleep club, ... you're very much welcome here. Now, take a breath, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let me take you there. The door creaks as it closes behind you, not because someone shut it loudly, but because it always creaks. The hinges are old, made of iron, and slightly warped from years of winter, damp, and summer heat. It's dim inside. The only light comes from a small clay oil lamp on a wooden shelf, and the faint orange glow of the hearth, now reduced to a few glowing embers. There's no chimney. It's way out through a hole in the roof. Slowly, sometimes it doesn't escape at all. The room is warm, but the air feels heavy, tinged with the earthy scent of wood smoke, dried herbs, wool, and the sharp, sour smell of unwashed linen. This is the main room, the only room for most people in the 1300s. The floor beneath your feet is packed earths, smoothed by years of foot traffic. Someone once tried to cover it with rushes, dried grass, or straw, but they've long since flattened, trampled into a pale, crumbling mat. To your left, there's a table with a bench. It's uneven, everything here is handmade. To your right, a low wooden bed, pushed up against the wall. The shutters don't quite close all the way, and a thread of cold night air slips through the cracks, brushing against your skin like a curious finger. It looks ... short, and it is. Beds in the 14th century were shorter than today's, not because people were drastically smaller, though on average they were a bit shorter, but because they didn't sleep stretched out. They slept sitting up, and soon so will you. You sit slowly on the edge of the bed. It creaks softly, not rudely, just a tired, familiar sigh. The mattress beneath you shifts, crunching faintly. It's filled with straw, old, dry, with a faint smell of field. If you shift too suddenly, a stork might poke through the ticking and scratch your thigh. You lean back, ... Not all the way. There is no pillow. Instead, a tightly rolled blanket or a folded woolen tunic supports your spine. It's not comfortable in the way you know comfort. It's just ... expected. Your body is wrapped in layers. A second-best tunic, a pair of wool hose, and an outer shift. You've loosened your belt, but left everything else on. Changing clothes at night isn't normal. It would be impractical, even dangerous. If something happens, a fire, a cry from the village, a raiding party. Besides, most people don't have enough garments to designate a special set for sleep. Sleep comes with the same clothes as waking. You pull the woolen blanket over yourself. It smells faintly of smoke and sheep. The hem doesn't quite reach your toes, but your feet are still wrapped in cloth, and the cold doesn't bother you yet. You exhale slowly. Your eyes drift upward to the low ceiling beams above your head. One has a knot in it, shaped like a crooked eye. You count the knots. 1, ... You are not alone. You hear a cough, a low murmur, then silence. In this home, beds are shared. Maybe you're beside your younger sibling, or your uncle, your grandmother, a neighbor's apprentice. There's no such thing as sleeping alone. Unless you're sick, it's crowded, but not strange. You've always slept this way. It's how you were raised. Bodies create warmth. Together, you stay alive through the coldest nights. You turn slightly, careful not to wake the others. The mattress shifts. Again, the straw rustling beneath you. It's like a living creature, one that groans softly as you move. You rest your head against the wall. It's cold, but steady. And then the silence deepens. Outside, a dog barks once, far off. Hooves clatter faintly down the muddy village road. A priest's built holes. One slow, distant note. Sleep begins to settle in. Not quickly, but like mist. Slow and even. You're half upright, not out of comfort. But tradition, medicine, superstition, fear, it's how you sleep. The fire in the hearth is almost out now. A few orange embers pulse quietly. They glow, fade. Glow again, steady, gentle. No flames, and the occasional soft pop, like a tiny heartbeat from the corner of the room. The wind sighs again through the shutters. It pushes at the boards, then moves on. The old house groans just a little, wood shifting, ropes tightening. Everything here speaks in quiet creaks and muffled movements. You can hear the slow, rhythmic breathing of the person beside you. They're already half asleep, slumped slightly, their head drooping to one side. Someone across the room snores, not loudly, but with the broken rhythm of a tired body in cold air. Overhead, you hear a scratch. Then a pause. Tiny footsteps on the ceiling beam. A mouse. They always come out at night. The rushes on the floor rustle faintly as something small moves near the hearth. And outside, faint hooves again. Someone riding by, late and silent, their horse's footfalls muffled by the muddy ground. You imagine a traveller passing your house, wrapped in a heavy cloak. His lantern dim behind folds of cloth, his breath forming little clouds as he rides past the darkened windows of your village. He won't stop. Not tonight. The blanket is rough, but warm. A heavy woolen weave, mended more than once. You run your fingers slowly along the edge. You can feel where it was repaired. Tiny knots, thicker threads, a patch sewn into the inside corner. It's not soft, but it's familiar. There's a smell, not unpleasant, but earthy. Smoke, lanolin, maybe a hint of damp wool from the day's mist. You tug it tighter around your shoulders, and your body settles, not into luxury. Sleep, for people in the 1300s, was not a private thing. It was shared, observed, participated in. No one expected to fall asleep immediately. They didn't check the time. There was no time, not as you know it. Only darkness and firelight. You sit half-reclined, eyes open, watching the glow of the embers fade into grey, listening to your world settle into silence, waiting for sleep to arrive, not all at once, but in slow spirals. Outside, the village is quiet. Only a few dogs bark. Someone opens a door. The wooden latch clicks. Then stillness again. The house is full, but calm. There might be 5 people here, maybe more, all sharing this space, sleeping or trying to. You can just barely see their shapes in the dark. One curled on the floor near the fire, one slumped in the second bed, one sitting upright like you, wrapped in a blanket, eyes closed but not quite asleep. You are not alone in your thoughts either. Everyone here knows that sleep is fragile. That night is long. And that safety comes not from softness. If someone stirs, you'll wake. If someone shouts, you'll rise. If illness comes in the night, or a shadow crosses the shutters, you'll be upright, already ready. It's just the way things are. You shift a little, feel the straw shift beneath you again. One stalk cracks with a soft snap. Another pokes you in the calf. Still, better straw than stone. Better warmth than wandering. Better this hard little bed than the cold ground outside. Your breath deepens. You let your eyes close. The hum of the night settles into your ears, quiet and vast. But it comes just like it did for them 700 years ago. Time slips in strange directions here. There's no ticking clock, no glowing numbers, only the slow breathing of the sleepers around you, and the quiet turning of the night itself. You're drifting now, but you don't expect to stay under for long. Because in the 1300s, sleep was understood not as one long, uninterrupted state, but as something that came in phase. It even had a name. First, sleep. And then, sometime after midnight, second sleep. First, sleep was a descent. The first few hours after the last embers were banked. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't forced. It was expected. People would sleep for 3, maybe 4 hours. And then they would wake naturally, gently. Still hours before sunrise. Still very much night. But now the room has changed. Someone stirs beside you. A throat clears. A soft grunt. Maybe even the beginning of a whispered conversation. No one is alarmed. No one cries out. It's called the watch. A quiet hour, sometimes two, that separates the two sleeps. And in that time, people do all kinds of small things. You sit up slightly straighter, though you were never really lying down. There's a low shifting as someone near the fire sits up to tend the coals. He pokes the ash gently with a metal rod. Sparks fly, tiny, brief stars that vanish into smoke. The fire glows a little brighter again, enough to see vague out. You catch a glimpse of someone else, a woman wrapped in a cloak, quietly whispering a prayer. She crosses herself, murmuring something in Latin, believing that these small hours were holy, quiet, more spiritually open, or stitched, or told short stories. They ate. It wasn't uncommon for people to have a light snack, bread. Couples might talk, reflect, or quietly. And then, as slowly as it came, this strange waking hour would pass. The body, half rested, returns to stillness. The mind drifts downward again, and the second sleep begins. The whispers have stopped. Your back rests once more against the rolled cloak behind you. Your knees are drawn close, your body wrapped in its woolen shell. There's a different quality to this sleep. The second one, it's deeper, heavier, less broken by sound. You won't dream as vividly. If the night is kind, the next time your eyes open, it will be because you hear a rooster cry, or the shutters rattle with morning wind. You let your weight sink downward. Not all the way, just a little more than before. The mattress sighs beneath you. Someone exhales. Another turns over, then stillness again. And then sleep, a quiet second descent into the darkness. The wind outside has faded, the rats have quieted, the embers are nearly gone. All that remains is the breath of sleepers, and the soft hum of the old wooden world around you, holding you as you drift. Why did people sleep sitting up? You wake slowly, but not all the way. Your body hasn't moved much, because it can't, not with your back propped at this angle, not with your knees drawn close, not with your blanket wrapped tightly around your chest like armor made of wool. This isn't laziness. This isn't discomfort. This is intentional. Because lying flat, as strange as it may sound, was not considered safe in the medieval world. It was thought to be dangerous. Lying flat could kill you, or so they thought. Doctors in the 1300s, they didn't wear white coats or prescribe pills. Instead, they followed the teachings of ancient writers. Especially one man, Galen, a Greek physician born over 1,200 years before your bed was made. According to Galen and his followers, the body was governed, linked to cheerfulness, phlegm, cold and moist, linked to sluggishness, black bile, cold and dry, linked to melancholy, yellow bile, hot and dry, linked to aggression. These humours move through the body in mysterious ways. And during sleep, when your guard was down, they were particularly unstable. Lying flat, they believed, let bad humours pool in your chest. Worse still, It could allow invisible vapors to rise, traveling from your stomach into your lungs, or worse, your brain. And if those vapors took hold, you might not wake up at all. The upright sleep was a defensive position, or at least at a steep angle. You weren't just reclining. You were guarding yourself against choking, against strange illnesses that came in the night. Some medieval guides, written by physicians or monks, keep your head raised above your heart. Avoid pressure on your stomach. Don't sleep on your left side after a meal. Don't stretch your legs fully. It makes blood sluggish. They advised you to stay warm, but not overheat. To avoid drafts, but allow some air to move. And fear not just of the body, but of the unseen. Because when night fell in the medieval world, it wasn't just sickness people feared, it was spirits. It's hard to imagine now, but for many in the 1300s, sleep was not just a physical act. It was a spiritual risk. The hours between sunset and sunrise were sacred. People believed that the soul became vulnerable during sleep, that it wandered, that it could be touched or taken by things not of this world. Why charms were placed near the bed, why images of saints or small wooden crosses were often hung above your head, not just for protection, but as anchors. Lying flat was the posture of the dead. You didn't lie out fully unless you were ill, dying. To sleep that way, to stretch out like a corpse, was tempting fate, or worse, inviting it. Better to look half ready to wait. Better to show, to God, to spirits. Monks and nuns had their own reasons for sleeping upright. In monastic life, night was sacred. Monks rose several times per night to pray. They slept to prepare. Their beds were often no more than wooden benches. Their heads never fully reclined. Their souls were meant to stay alert, even in dreams. And so, the posture mattered. It was a sign of readiness, of humility, of spiritual posture, not just physical. They may not have been monks, but they, too, feared what dreams might bring. It was holy. Modern historians and doctors have sometimes speculated, too, particularly for those suffering from chronic illnesses that were common in 1300s, tuberculosis, asthma. For someone with chest problems, an upright posture may have brought relief. Of course, most people didn't understand the respiratory system. The sick who slept upright lived longer. The elderly breathed easier in that position. Those who lay flat too often didn't wake up. It became folk knowledge, handed down, whispered, accepted. Now, back in your bed, you feel the hard angle of the cloak behind you. Your head nods forward slightly as you drift. Your spine aches a little, but not enough to move. This is how you've always slept. This is how your parents slept. This is how people sleep. You didn't read about it in a book. You probably couldn't read. And even if you could, there were few books to begin with. So how did you know? How did you come to believe with complete certainty that sleeping upright was better? That a little tilt of the spine might save your life? The answer is, everyone told you. Wisdom passed in whispers your mother told you when you were small, tucked the rolled tunic behind your back, told you not to stretch out too far, that if you lay too flat, you might choke. Or worse, let your soul wander too far from your body in the night. She heard it from her mother, and her mother from hers. It wasn't a debate. It was a given, like the need to eat, or pray, or fear storms, even if they didn't understand the why. And if you asked your grandmother, she might lean in and say that people who lie flat look too much like the dead. Better to sleep like someone who's still half awake. Just in case, if you were lucky or wealthy, a physician might visit when someone in your family fell ill. They would bring with them a bag of dried herbs, oils, small tools, ... and beliefs. They might feel your pulse and nod seriously. Ask about your diet. Examine your tongue. Ask how you sleep. If you told them you'd been lying flat, they'd likely frown. Warn you, advise elevation. Prop you with pillows. Instruct you to drink a hot broth with honey and thyme. In their world, upright sleep allowed vapors to escape, helped your body maintain its balance of heat and moisture, and posture was armor. The monasteries were another source. Even if you never stepped foot inside one, their teachings reached you. Monks produced manuscript pages, hand-copied, filled with religious commentary and practical advice. Some were for clergy. Some were copied for nobles. A few made their way into the homes of the literate. These books might advise gentle sleeping postures, regular nighttime prayers, and techniques for avoiding spiritual intrusion during dreams. No flat sleep. Too dangerous. Too vulnerable. Better to keep the soul from floating too far. In your bed now, you can almost hear those voices, passed through generations, mumbled across centuries, stitched into lullabies and bedside habits. They weren't all doctors. They weren't all monks. But they knew or believed they did. And belief in a world like this was often stronger than knowledge. What else was done to keep sleep safe? You weren't helpless. Even if sleep could be dangerous, you had tools. Not modern medicine, but small protections. People protected their beds in many ways. Some hung dried herbs, lavender, chamomile, rosemary. These herbs were believed to ward off illness, or worse, night spirit. Some people tied a carved piece of wood, usually shaped like a cross. Some laid a knife beneath the bed to protect against. Even those who wore in tea, particularly religious, might say a small prayer out loud before closing their eyes. It might have been something whispered like, "Keep the breath in me. Let the dark pass gently. Let me wake, still myself." And then there was fire. A low fire was kept for warmth. Yes, but it also kept spirits away, or so people believed. The flicker of light was calming, comforting. It created shadows, yes, but it also kept darker things in check. But to wake in firelight, that was the closest thing to safety. You might sleep with your back to the wall, facing the room, ready not because you expected to fight anything. People sometimes didn't wake, and in a world where death came easily, it made sense to sleep like someone who might need to stand up quickly. Posture as meaning over time, the posture became more than habit. It became a symbol. To sleep upright was to acknowledge the fragility of life. To say, I am still here. I am not ready. People accepted that they wouldn't sleep deeply all the time, that their sleep would be broken, interrupted, observed. There was a humility in that. The body was not in control. The world around you was stronger. But even in sleep, you could participate in protecting yourself. And that meant propping yourself up. Not with fear, but with understanding. You stir again. The bed shifts. The night holds steady. There is no rush to sleep now, because the act of lying here, angled, aware, is itself a kind of sleep, a slow descent, not into unconsciousness, but into a different way of being. The sleep you know was not always known the sleep we know today. Full beds, deep pillows, soft sheets, silent rooms is new. For most of human history, sleep was hard, cold, crowded, uneven, interrupted, intentional. It wasn't just about rest. It was a dance with health, a guard against death, a posture of patience. And though it might sound uncomfortable to us now, for them it was normal, expected, familiar, a part of daily life, or rather nightly life. To sleep sitting up was simply how it was done. You lean back now, just slightly. Your room is dark, but not hostile. Your blanket is warm, your space is safe. There are no vapors waiting for you to join it. Not all beds were made alike. You already know the straw-stuffed mattress, the thin wool blanket, the cold-packed floor, the faint drafts slipping through shutters. But just a few streets away, behind a door made of heavier wood, and their bed is ... different. Not because they need sleep more, but because they have wealth. In the 1300s, how you slept wasn't just a matter of comfort. It was a reflection of your status, your means, your place in the order of things. Sleep, like food, clothing, and language, was hierarchical. From the peasant's mattress to the noble's feather bed. And let's begin where we left off, with the ordinary, the common, the shared. Part 1. The Peasant's Night. You know this room already. Packed earth, a bed frame made by a neighbor, maybe even by your father. It sags a little in the middle, the mattress filled with straw. Not fresh straw, just straw. Blankets are layered, sometimes 2 or 3, but thin and always of wool, no linens, no sheets, no extra covers. The smell is familiar. Smoke, old wool, dried herbs, people, bodies, time. Everyone shares. In winter, you may be under the same blanket as a cousin or grandparent. There is no such thing as privacy here. The concept doesn't even fully exist. You sleep where you eat. You eat where you wash. You wash where you store firewood, shoes, seeds, and tools. And when it's time for sleep, you curl, you tuck, and you do not complain. Part 2. The noble's chamber now. Imagine climbing a narrow staircase. Torches in brackets. The air grows cooler, then warmer again, thicker with scent. We step into a bedchamber. This room is large, very large, but oddly empty. Furniture is expensive, sparse. The bed is enormous. A tall frame with carved posts and thick woven drapes. It is called a tester bed, named for the canopy above, and the bedding, feathers, stacked, dozens of them. A feather mattress, feather pillows, feather bolsters, velvet throws. It looks luxurious, but still, ... The mattress is lumpy in places, and the sheets, hand-woven, are coarse by modern standards. You touch the coverlet, it's stiff with embroidery. This noble will not sleep alone. A servant might curl at the foot of the bed or in a chair nearby. A lady-in-waiting might share the room, and just beyond the wall, the rest of the household breathes. Curtains can be drawn. Firewood is stacked high. The chamber part is freshly emptied. A brazier glows in the corner, warming the stone walls. And there's even scent in the air, cloves, maybe, or dried petals laid in a small wooden box. For the noble, sleep is not just rest. It is ceremony, an extension of status, a statement of wealth. Part 3. Differences you can feel. Let's compare the details, softly. Mattresses, peasants had straw or rush. Nobles had goose feather or even wool stuffed. Blankets, peasants had one or two. Nobles had multiple layers, linen. Sleepwear, most peasants slept in their tunic. Nobles might wear a nightshirt or even undergarments. Privacy. A peasant might sleep beside 3 people. A noble had curtains. ... servants. ... Linen was washed more often, sometimes monthly. The noble slept upright too. The king's bed was a stage royal. Beds were enormous. In some castles they were wider than they were long, but attendants, guards, and even messengers who might wake him in the night. And yet he too slept at an angle. No one was exempt from the rules of health and superstition. A physician might oversee the king's bedtime, adjusting pillows, monitoring food intake, placing charms under the bolster. The bed itself was symbolic. It was often carved, gilded, painted, but it was also cold. Stone walls, thin windows, no insulation. And so a bed within the bed was made, blankets draped from canopy poles to trap heat. It was called a bed within a bed, layers upon layers, but the same fear of lying flat. The king might command armies, but at night he too sat waiting for sleep to come. Part 5. Social sleep norms across all classes. Some things were shared. The belief that night was vulnerable, the idea that flatness meant death, the understanding that bodies needed warmth, proximity, protection. And so, whether you slept in a straw-stuffed sack, in a one-room cottage, or in a feather-filled fortress behind velvet curtains, you slept in pieces, you sat, reclined, you prayed, you waited, and you drifted. Sleep in the monastery. It's darker here. Sound barely echoes. Even the fire burns quietly. You've entered the world of the monastery. Outside, the world continues its bustle. But here, in this stone sanctuary, silence hangs like cloth from the rafters. There is no shouting, no idle chatter, no crying children, only breath, footsteps, the rustle of wool robes, and the occasional toll of a distant bell. A life measured by bells in the monastic world, time is not marked by sunrise or sleepiness, but by the rule. Cistercians and other orders, life is divided into canonical hours, fixed times for prayer, study, labor, and rest. Matins in the middle of the night, lauds before dawn. Monks rise before the first light, summoned by a bell to chant, to kneel, to recite psalms. And when their prayer is done, they return to bed, but only for a short while. Their nights are not long. They are segmented just like their days. The monastic dormitory. Imagine a great hall, cold stone, rows of wooden beds or pallets, lined up with perfect symmetry. Some monasteries used long benches with no backs. Others allowed individual cots, placed side by side. Each monk had only what was permitted: a blanket, a robe, a small pillow if granted, not even a whispered word. Monks communicated in gestures or not at all, and they slept sitting up. Monks did not lie flat unless they were ill. Most slept half upright, backs supported by wooden frames or a folded cloak. The idea was simple. Sleep was a necessity. To lie down fully invited temptation, dreams, unclean thoughts. To sit slightly was to remain alert, watchful. Ready, they did not sleep deeply. Their goal was not rest, it was discipline. To monks and nuns, every act, even sleep, had meaning. The bed was not a sanctuary of pleasure, it was a station of humility. They entered sleep with prayers on their lips. Into thy hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit. They expected to wake not in the morning, but when the bell rang again, to rise, to pray, to walk through cloisters in the dark with only candlelight. Their sleep was brief, interrupted. Holy, they dreamed. In fact, some monks were taught to confess dreams in case they revealed temptation or pride. Dreams were never innocent. They were messages, signs, even warnings. The weight of the blanket, the stillness of the body, even the physical posture, hands folded, legs straight, not stretched in luxury, but arranged, as one would lay the dead, ready to meet God, should that hour come. Some monks slept without a blanket in summer, as a form of discipline, but still, they too felt the cold. They too sat, slightly hunched, propped by will and habit, waiting for sleep to arrive in its proper, measured way. And when it came, it was accepted briefly, silently. And so, in the monastery, as in the peasant's home and the noble's bedchamber. But here it was belief above all, no superstition. The body is not in charge. The soul leads, and the soul does not lie down. Let's return now to the castles and halls of the upper class. Because for nobles, sleep was not only for health or comfort. Guests were sometimes allowed to see the bed. Servants, dressed and undressed, the master of the house. Chambers were swept, fires lit, curtains arranged. Everything, even sleep, had an audience. And the angle of your sleep, the materials of your bed, it all meant something. Upright posture became part of etiquette. To lie flat was slothful. To rise with dignity was admired. A noble might say they slept like a king, but a king did not stretch out like a child. He reclined, yes, but with purpose. Even in sleep, he remained sovereign. Whether wrapped in wool on a packed floor, or beneath a velvet canopy, or in silence among stone walls. All people of the 1300s slept the same way in one regard. They did not lie down. They sat, propped, waiting, watching. They did not see sleep as private. It was shared, ritualized, monitored, believed, and beneath all the differences in wealth, comfort, custom, there was a shared understanding. Sleep was a risk, a passage, a place between worlds, and so you prepared for it, by sitting upright, by watching the fire die low, by listening to the world fade, by trusting that the morning would come. Eventually, your bed may be humble, but for now, you are part of their world, and their world is at rest. To sleep like the dead, sleep, death, and a quiet elite sleep they believed was a little death, and death was sleep that never ended. It's a quiet belief, but not a modern one. Long before alarm clocks and warm tea, people stared into their hearts at midnight. What if I don't wake? It wasn't morbid. It was just life. Life in a world where illness moved fast, where nights were long and cold, where dreams carried weight, and death often came silently in the dark. So tonight, in this last hour, we explore the connection between sleep and death, not in fear, but in stillness. How the medieval world prepared for its final sleep, and why people slept sitting up, even after they'd gone. Sleeping like the dead, you heard the saying before. He sleeps like the dead. But in the 1300s, that phrase would have carried a very different image, because the dead did not recline gently. They were laid out flat, arms folded, eyes closed, legs together, in complete stillness. It was the only time people were laid like that. In life, as we've seen, people avoided that position. So to sleep like the dead, it meant danger, risk. Even the act of lying flat carried superstition. Children were taught not to stretch out on the floor. Their body was prepared, gently, often by the same hands that had helped them sit up in bed each night. Now they were arranged flat, perhaps for the first time in months. Death, they believed, had finally come to claim the posture it owned. Death was not private. In noble households, a dying person was surrounded by family, servants, clergy. A candle was lit, prayers said. The bed was draped in linens that hadn't touched illness before. To die lying down was expected, but only once it could no longer be helped, and once the moment passed, everything became about symbolism. The sheets were what? The mattress, air, sometimes burned. A new bed might be made in its place, not out of indulgence, but to remove the presence of death. And yet, even in burial, people slept as they had not in life, flat, finally, fully at rest. Now we cross gently into contrast, because not all sleep was equal. Not even in death. The wealthy were buried in prepared crypts or stone tombs. Their effigies, carved in alabaster, their heads rested gently on a cushion of stone, their posture deliberate. These images became standard in churchyards and cathedrals. To die well was to appear at peace. Even in the grave, posture mattered. And again, we see the angle. Even in sculpture, some were shown with slightly elevated heads. But for the poor, there was no stone pillow, no feathered rest. Just the earth, wrapped in linen, tucked beneath the ground. No epitaph, no carved image of eternal sleep. Only rest, only the long night. Sleep as passage, and what came after medieval people did not separate sleep from the afterlife. To sleep was to begin. Monks taught that the soul might hover in the moment after death. And so, sleep rituals were echoed in death rituals. The room kept silent. Sacred, some believed that in sleep your soul traveled, and if you didn't wake, it simply kept going. So every night held that tension. Will I return? Or am I already gone, and still they slept, not from despair, but from faith. That dreams were glimpses, not threats. That sleep was not failure, but release. And that waking, whether in this world or the next, was simply part of the journey. Sleep, death, and the garments of rest, even the clothes of sleep, reflected mortality. Most people didn't change for bed. As you remember, they wore their day tunic or their best spare. But in some cases, especially among the elderly, because it might be the one they died in, to be clean, to be ready, to not offend heaven, some slept with a cross round their neck. Others placed one under their blanket. If they died in the night, they wanted to be found prepared. Even with all this awareness of death, it was not fearful, just quiet, serious, human. The night that never ends. So now, as we close this long night, as the embers fade and the wind shifts and your own body sinks softly into the mattress beneath you, remember, sleep in the 1300s, for discipline, for status, for the end. To sit up was to hold the world at bay. To sleep in angles was to show respect. To drift slowly, watchfully, was to remain part of the living. Even in the coldest rooms, in the lowest beds, they slept, awake, aware, and willing to greet. You lean your head back slightly. The room is quiet. The beams above you have stopped creaking. No more wind at the window, no more scurrying mice. Only sleep. Real sleep. But the gentle, modern kind. The kind that doesn't need straw, or cloaks, or angled spines. What people in the 1300s believed lurked in the night. The bed is still, the fire has gone out, the night is heavier now. Not colder, just thicker, like velvet. And somewhere between that second sleep and the first light, your mind begins to wander, not in thought, but in dream. But in the 1300s, dreams were not something to ignore. They were warnings, prophecies, temptations, messages from angels or demons. Because to sleep back then was not just to rest the body, it was to unseal the mind. Well, let's open that window slowly, or a dog, or falling. Today it might be dismissed, but not in the 14th century. In medieval Europe, dreams were seen as messages from higher or lower powers. There were signs to be interpreted, tracked, feared. The medieval world had dream books, handwritten guides that listed symbols and their meanings. Dream of a horse. It might mean a journey. Dream of snakes. Deceit is near. Dream of flying. You're being tempted by pride. Others were traps, but none were meaningless. And every sleeper, from the peasant to the monk, to the lord in his tower bed, woke in the dim morning light, wondering, what was that dream trying to tell me? The influence of ancient belief. The idea that dreams held power wasn't unique to the 1300s. It came from much older sources. Greek philosophers, Roman mystics, early Christian theologians. Aristotle thought dreams revealed bodily imbalances. Hippocrates thought they reflected diseases. Augustine warned that dreams might be used by the devil to corrupt the soul. Medieval scholars debated these ideas for centuries. Some saw dreams as natural, the result of digestion. Others insisted they were supernatural. And so, the average person listened to both. They ate lightly before bed. They prayed to protect their dreams. They watched their sleeping posture, not just for health, but to guard the soul. Might lead you wrong. You stir now, just slightly. A dream begins to take shape behind your closed eyes. Strange, a river, a face. It feels like nothing, but tomorrow someone will tell you what it meant. Demons in the dark. Not every nighttime visitor was kind. People in the 1300s lived in a world filled with unseen spirits. Most were afraid of one in particular. A demon of the night, the incubus, was said to visit sleepers lying on their chest, weighing them down, whispering things into their unconscious. People woke feeling breathless, heavy, confused. Today, we'd call this sleep paralysis. Back then, they called it a a spiritual attack. Crosses beneath their pillow, prayers scrawled in tiny ink on folded parchment. Others kept a small statue of Saint Michael, the demon fighter. It was dangerous for the soul. Prayers to guard the mind, just as there were protections for the body. A mother might teach her child, say you'll sleep. A knight might say, Saint George, guard my dreams. A nun might whisper Latin verses, almost silently, while folding herself into her narrow cot. Because it was known, the devil comes when we are weaker. So the mind was watched, guarded, wrapped, not in blankets, but in verses and faith. And if a dream did come, it was examined the next morning, interpreted, weighed. Maybe it was a message. Outside, the wind has quieted. Inside, your body is still. You're breathing deep, but your mind, your dreaming mind, is traveling across symbols, across fears, across what-ifs that float like candle smoke. And you wonder, in that floating state, is this dream mine? Omens and creatures of the night. Not all nighttime fears came in dreams. Some walked the edges of villages, peered through shutters, cried in the distance. People feared. Cats, owls, dogs howling crickets that suddenly fell silent. The sound of your name whispered when no one was there. That meant a spirit had passed close by. It could take you, so people learned not to respond to nighttime sounds. Just stay still. Say nothing. Keep the covers high. Let the night pass. You're still lying back, still wrapped in the hush of night. But something shifts now. A breeze, maybe, a door in the mind, and you begin to wonder, what did it mean to sleep? Not just in a castle or a cottage or a monastery, but far away in Damascus. In tonight, you'll travel there gently, quietly, through the memory of their sleep. Because the medieval world was not just Europe, it was vast, and it too slept. Sleep in the Islamic Golden Age. Let's begin in Baghdad around the 9th or 10th century. The city is luminous, a center of learning, poetry, science, and light. Here, scholars debate philosophy late into the night. By candle, sleep is still necessary, of course, but it is observed differently. In Islamic tradition, the Prophet Muhammad recommended an afternoon nap. Sleep is seen as divinely balanced. Too much, a waste. Too little, dangerous. And so, people rest in phases. A peaceful waking just before dawn for Fajr. Often simple, a low mattress rolled out across the floor. Clean linens, a light cloth inside. Wall in winter. You sleep facing Mecca, if possible, or at least on your right side. Dreams here are interpreted, too, but through a spiritual lens. A strange dream might be brought to a faqih, a legal scholar. It might be written down, studied, prayed over, not ignored. Because dreams like verses, might carry hidden meaning. China's Dreaming Chamber, the Song and Ming dynasties. Until we reach Hangzhou in China, sometime in the Song dynasty, or later during the Ming, the home is quiet. Not crowded, but not large. A scholar, perhaps a poet, has finished his work for the day. He prepares for sleep. In Chinese tradition, especially shaped by Confucianism and Taoism, sleep is not feared, but respected. It restores harmony, the balance of qi, vital energy. Too much wakefulness interrupts the body's natural flow. Too much rest stagnates the spirit. So the man opens a window to let in cool air. He places a porcelain pillow beneath his head. Hard, yes, but believed to support healthy dreams and posture. Some believe it keeps the brain clear. Nearby, an incense coil burns. Not to frighten spirits, but to calm the room. His bed is a low wooden platform, covered in woven mats during summer. Thick cotton in winter. He does not sleep curled, but rather straight and still, often on his back or side, the body aligned with heaven and earth. And as he dreams, he might hope for a vision of his ancestors, because in China, dreams are teachers. Sleep in indigenous North America, now we drift across the oceans, river valleys, lands unbroken by cities. The year doesn't matter exactly. We are in a village of the Haudenosaunee, or maybe the ancestral Pueblones, or the Chinook, or the Mississippians. Each culture is distinct, but many share a reverence for the night. Sleep in these societies is deeply entwined with community and cosmology. There are no separate bedrooms. People sleep in groups, in longhouses, earthen lodges, or cliffside dwellings. Blankets are made of animal hides or woven grasses. Dreams are sacred. Among the Iroquois, dreams are messages that demand action. If you dream of losing something, you must find it or risk imbalance. If you dream of water, a ritual might be performed. Children are taught to remember their dreams, to share them, to listen for guidance. There is no bad dream, only unanswered ones. And so people drift into sleep, not just for rest, but to receive instructions. Sleep is a gift, a guide, part of the world. Sleep in Mesoamerica, the Aztecs and Maya, farther south, deep into what is now Mexico and Central America. And they, too, slept with purpose. Among the Maya, the sleeping mind was believed to travel to Xibalba, the underworld, not as punishment, but as pilgrimage. One foot in this world, one in another. Their homes were modest, adobe or stone. Hammocks kept sleepers away from damp floors, insects, and wandering spirits. The calendar itself was built on cycles, not just of time, but of light and dark. Some priests fasted before sleep, preparing for dreams. Others sought visions through herbs, smoke, or ritual. A powerful dream could change a decision, redirect a plan, redefine a person's role in society. Because in these cultures, dreams didn't reflect your mind. They revealed your path. A slow evolution of the bed and bedroom. The fire's gone out, but don't worry, there's warmth still. Not from flame, but from memory. Because tonight, in this long, quiet hour, we follow the gentle arc of history, not through battles or kings, but through the simple, humble bed, that place where we all return. Night after night, century after century, of silk, of wood and linen and iron. Let's start where we left off. The earliest beds, the very first beds, weren't beds at all. They were simply nests. Thousands of years ago, early humans piled soft grass, moss, and leaves in corners of caves, away from wind and predators. These resting places weren't private. They weren't raised, but they served the same purpose they do now: to rest, to restore, to survive another day. Archaeologists have found sleeping platforms in caves in South Africa dating back 77,000 years, layers of sedge, ash, and aromatic herbs believed to repel insects. A bed, even then, had purpose. But as humans formed communities and homes, raised beds and early frames by the time of ancient Egypt, wooden frames gently curved to hold the spine, sometimes elaborately carved, often with feet shaped like animal paws. The pharaohs, of course, had the finest. Their mattresses were woven cords, softened by linen. But even a modest Egyptian family might raise their bed on bricks. Why? Because the ground was home to vermin and spirits. To sleep higher was to sleep safer. The Romans took this further. In wealthy villas, you might find multiple beds, another for eating, and even one for studying. Their beds were often narrow, with frames of wood or bronze, ropes for support, and thick woolen cushions. And yet they too slept partially upright, propped by bolsters, in tunics, prepared for sudden waking. Sound familiar? Some habits, it seems, never fully disappeared. Medieval beds, wood, wool, and community. We've spent long hours here, sitting, half reclining, on straw-filled sacks and woolen rolls. In the Middle Ages, beds were functional above all, made of planks, tied together with rope or pegs, topped with mattresses stuffed with straw, rushes, or feathers. If you were lucky, they weren't private. A family might share a single bed, or a servant might sleep at your feet. Only the wealthy had bedrooms at all. Others slept where they ate, cooked, lived, and even then, no one truly lay flat. We've talked about why, but it's worth remembering. The bed was a space of strategy, not softness. It creaked, it shifted, it welcomed the cold, but it endured. The renaissance of the bed, something changed in the 1400s, but slowly, gently, privacy began to grow. The idea that a person, even a child, might need space, quiet, their own place to rest. Rooms became more divided, bed curtains more elaborate. The feather mattress became a symbol of comfort, not just wealth. In Italy and France, carved bed frames became works of art, with high posts, canopies, embroidered. The bed became a centerpiece of the room, no longer hidden in the corner, but placed in the center, like a throne. Nobles received guests in bed. Dignitaries were entertained, while the host lounged among pillows. To lie down, at last, became acceptable. As it always does, the arrival of sleepwear and sheets. It might surprise you, but for centuries, people didn't really change for bed. Tunic, cloak, shift. The same clothes worn through the day were worn into the night. The idea of night clothes only took hold around the 60s. Only for the wealthy. The nightshirt became a thing of linen. The nightcap followed, to hold in warmth, not style. Sheets became layered. Pillows multiplied. Still, many continued to sleep upright. The sick, those who remembered old fears, remembered the Enlightenment and the bedroom by the 1700s and 1800s. Bedrooms had doors. Beds had springs, coils of metal replacing ropes. Mattresses became thicker, layered, often filled with horsehair or cotton. And finally, for the first time, sleep became private. Now, the idea of one bed per person, and with that came silence. You no longer heard your father snoring beside you, or your grandmother praying quietly into her pillow, or your cousin kicking in his sleep. You were alone, safe, and perhaps a little lonelier. Your day begins, waking up in the 1300s. The light is faint, not quite sun, and the fire, it's gone out. Only grey ash and the smell of charred oak linger near the hearth. You never are. Someone is already stirring, a sibling, a cough, the creak of a straw mattress, the sound of cloth being pulled tight around tired shoulders. You've slept, not deeply, not perfectly, enough to live one more day. The history of the bed, where civilization slept, you're lying still. Your head rests on a pillow, your spine cradled by something soft, something familiar. It's not the first of its kind, not even close. You are sleeping atop the very peak of a long, millions of sleeping bodies, centuries a size into darkness, and the bed, this quiet witness, it creaks, it softens, it remembers. Let's follow it. When a bed wasn't a bed at first, there were no beds, only places to collapse. Dry leaves, gathered grasses, animal skins laid near the hearth, caves, dugouts. People slept on what the earth offered, whatever kept them from cold. The oldest sleeping surface ever discovered was found in South Africa. It was a bed of sedge and ash laid over clay. The plant matter added warmth. It wasn't a bed, but it was the first whisper of one. Ancient Egypt. Beds a status. In ancient Egypt, sleeping above the earth meant safety. Wooden frames were gently curved, shaped like small boats. Legs were carved like lions' paws. Beds of pharaohs were gilded with gold, inlaid with ivory. The poor slept on mats. woven from reeds, pillows hard, but their shape mattered. They raised the head and protected the soul. Greece and Rome, beds for sleeping, eating, and thinking. In the classical world, the bed had many lives. In Roman villas, there were 3 kinds of beds. For reclining during meals, lectus luc, it was displayed just like a statue or a painting. Romans built beds from wood, bronze, or iron. They filled them with wool, feathers, or cords. They adorned them with carvings and drapery. They often slept partly upright. Even the wealthy rarely laid fully flat, because that posture resembled death. The Middle Ages, the bed as a fortress. You've seen this world already. Wooden slats, straw-filled sacks, woolen blankets, and a draught creeping in from the cracks. But there were also beds of the elite, towering and adorned. Tall wooden headboards, bedposts, silk bed curtains to block wind and prying eyes, and yet people still slept fully dressed, wrapped their feet in cloth, used a rolled-up cloak as a pillow. For nobles, the bed was a stage. Lords signed treaties among pillows. The bed was not for sleeping alone, it was for being seen. The Renaissance, the bed, as theatre by the 15th century, everything began to change. The bed became the centerpiece of the room, no longer hidden in a corner. In France, noble families began hosting the king's awakening, a morning ritual where courtiers would visit the monarch. Diplomats, priests, and servants would gather, while the ruler remained reclining. Among commoners, however, the situation remained familiar. Families shared beds, children slept at their parents' feet. Everyone kept their clothes on, and straw still poked from under the sheets. But the idea of privacy was beginning to spread. Quietly, the 18th-19th century, the birth of the bedroom. The idea of a bedroom, a room just for sleep, emerged in this era. People began to sleep on coiled springs, use horsehair or cotton-stuffed mattresses, change bed linens regularly, wear nightshirts. The bed finally became a place of comfort. Pillows were softened with down. Small tables and lamps appeared nearby. For the first time, sleep became a private act. A boundary was drawn, not just physical. The bedroom became a haven. The 21st century. Today's beds are softer, wider, smarter. We now sleep on memory foam, adjustable bases, orthopedic supports, heated blankets, climate-controlled mattresses. Beds have USB ports. They glow. They massage. We still lie down, close our eyes, and hope for peace. Because progress in beds does not always mean progress in sleep. In many ways, we remain connected to the peasants and kings who came before, still hoping to wake lighter. Insomnia through the ages, a restless history. Have you ever turned on your side, then the other, then back again, eyes open, breath shallow, the room unchanged, and no sleep comes? You are not alone. Across centuries, in every type of home, beneath every kind of sky, someone was awake, just like you waiting for sleep. And this is their story. When sleep refused to come, insomnia is not a modern affliction. The earliest medical texts, clay tablets from Mesopotamia, describe those who lay restless as the moon passed thrice overhead, were pierced by invisible darts in the night, could not rest, for their spirit would not leave them be. Even then, sleeplessness had many names, or simply a sign of worry too large to sleep. Besides, some saw it as divine, but for all it was a visitor in the dark. Ancient remedies. If you could not sleep, ancient traditions offered remedies. The Greeks boiled poppy seed milk. The Romans drank infusions of lettuce and vinegar. The Chinese used ginseng, chrysanthemum, and crushed pearl. The Indians in Ayurvedic medicine. Babylonian tablets offered incantations. Egyptian scrolls advised speaking to the moon. In medieval Europe, you might place a sprig of mugwort. I bid the dream not dread. Some mixed herbs with wine. Others simply stared at the wall. The night was long, and they were awake. The night as a spiritual trial in monasteries, vigils, nighttime hours of silent prayer. They stayed awake deliberately, believing that the soul was most open. But even outside monasteries, many believed that God watched the sleepless, that to lie awake in the dark was to be seen, and in that stillness some found peace, others, and others still, the flicker of insight. Some of the world's greatest ideas were born not in daylight. Leonardo da Vinci barely slept, claiming to live on might. Charles Dickens walked for hours through London. Franz Kafka, tormented by his own sleeplessness. I have the true feeling of myself only when I am unbearably unhappy. A quiet world where the mind could wander undisturbed. For others, it was a prison, where every minute awake felt like a sentence. Either way, sleeplessness shaped art, and those hours became part of their legacy, folk wisdom and midnight superstitions. Throughout history, those who couldn't sleep were told, whisper a prayer 3 times in reverse. Place your slippers upside down. Don't look at the moon. It stirs the mind. Insomnia was never just biological. People blamed witches, demons, unfulfilled promises. A sleepless night wasn't just unpleasant, and people did whatever they could to avoid another. Modernity and the vanishing of sleep, then came the clocks, and the gas lamps, and the electricity. Sleep was no longer shaped by sunrise and stars, but by shifts and schedules. And insomnia, it multiplied, cities glowed. Night work began. By the early 20th century, physicians began naming insomnia in scientific journals. Sleep was now a medical field, and restlessness a disorder. Pills were prescribed. Dreams were charted, but still people lay in the dark, staring at ceilings. The soul hadn't changed. Only the room, dreams, the forgotten messages of sleep. You're floating now. Your breath is slow. Your body is still, but your mind It's wandering. You may not know where you are. A forest, a corridor, a city that does not exist. You might see faces from long ago, or hear voices you haven't heard in years. This is a dream. And for most of human history, it meant something. The first interpreted, long before modern psychology, before Freud or brain scans or REM cycles, to the Babylonians, dreams were letters from the gods. To the Egyptians, they were prophecies, glimpses of the future. To the Greeks, they were healing tools, dreams used to diagnose illness or guide recovery. In the temples of Asclepius, the god of healing, the priests would listen, interpret. Each detail mattered. Dreams were not random. Books of dreams across the ancient world. People didn't just dream, they recorded. There were dream dictionaries as early as 2000 BCE. To dream of water meant ambition, of falling, failure, or shame. Of teeth falling out, illness, or loss. Entire books were written to catalogue meanings. Artemodorus, a 2nd century Greek scholar, compiled 5 volumes of dream analyses. He believed every symbol had a personal and cultural resonance. It was your world whispering back. Nightmares and night beings, but not all dreams were kind. Nightmares were feared. People believed they were caused by demons who sat on the chest, ghosts of the recently dead, unfinished business, debts unpaid, promises broken, or even witches visiting in their sleep. In many cultures, the mind was a stage, and evil could pass through the veil. That's why many people slept sitting up, not just for health, but for protection, because lying flat made you vulnerable to spirits, to that darkness behind the eye. Prayers before sleep to shield the mind, people turned to ritual. Some whispered prayers, guard me through shadow. Others placed objects beside the bed, knives under pillows to cut evil crosses above the bed to keep spirits away. Dream catchers in some cultures, to filter visions in Japan, people avoided sleeping facing north, the direction of the dead. In parts of Europe, they avoided cheese at night. Every action before bed was a preparation. Freud, Jung, and the science of dreaming. Sigmund Freud called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. He believed they revealed buried desires, fears, and childhood memories, disguised in strange symbols. Carl Jung saw dreams as messages from the deeper self, archetypes, shadows, and ancient instincts rising to the surface. By the 20th century, scientists studied REM sleep, and still, even in labs, dreams remained mysterious. No one can fully explain them, and perhaps that's the point. Shared dreams, forgotten dreams. Have you ever woken? That is part of their power. Dreams are Yet across the world, people claim shared dreams with loved ones, premonitions that came true, messages from those who had passed entire songs or inventions heard first in dreams. Einstein, Paul McCartney. Each claimed a dream gave them something real, a melody, a moment of clarity. Segment X, conclusion, the dreamer's journey. And now, maybe you're dreaming. Maybe your eyes have closed, and this voice is a shape in the distance. Or maybe you're still here, listening, wondering. Either way, the dream is coming. Not the loud, but the slow, quiet one shaped like smoke. The kind that lingers after you wake, like the warmth of someone who left the room just before you opened your eyes. The kind our ancestors honored. They didn't need science to believe in dreams. They just listened. So now, the bed beneath you holds not just your body, but all your stories. And when the dream comes, don't chase it. Let it find you. Sleep then, sleep now. You are still, perhaps, barely awake. Or maybe dreaming already. And that's just right. Because this story, this long, slow story of sleep, was never meant to keep you. It was meant to keep you company. To walk beside you as your thoughts softened, as your body settled, as the world around you went quiet. Part 1, Then and Now. There is a moment every night that looks the same across centuries. In 1300, it was a sigh into a rough wool blanket, a prayer into the cold air, the rustle of straw beneath cloth-wrapped feet. In 2025, it's the hum of a fan, the buzz of a screen turned face down, the curve of memory foam, the glow of a distant street light through curtains. Same longing. We all want one thing: to rest, to let go, to wake again. Part 2. What we carry to bed no matter the year. We bring ourselves to bed. Worries, hopes, regrets, lists, unfinished questions, unanswered loves, not spoken aloud. The bed, whether made of gold or straw, holds it all. And somehow, each night, it helps carry the weight and welcomes you back. Part 3. Sleep as trust. To sleep is to trust. It's to allow the world to move on without you. To believe the roof will hold. To trust that morning will come. Every night you give yourself to the unknown, and every morning you return. That rhythm has held for thousands of years, and it holds. Part 4. You are not alone tonight. As you rest, others are doing the same. In a city apartment, in a farmhouse beneath a rattling tin roof, in a boat gently rocking on the sea, in a dormitory, in a hospital room. In the curve of someone else's arms, the world is full of sleepers. No matter what tomorrow asks of you, this moment. Part 5. Drift, so let yourself drift. If you're still listening, let your thoughts become softer. Not forced, not pushed, just. Let them scatter like petals or fold like linens. Let them sink like moonlight into still water. There's nothing more to do. Just be. The night is vast, and it waits for you patiently. So let go, let this story fade. Let the stillness deepen. You've wandered through history, now wander through dreams. Gentle farewell. Thank you for spending this quiet time with me. If you're still awake, you're always welcome here. And if you're asleep already, well, you're exactly where you're meant to be. From this old bed to yours and sleep well.